This is Gemara and Eruvin, Daf Yomi, and of course the learning for Chodesh Elul is sponsored as a schos for Roshleim V'Shana Tova Bas Esther, as well as schos for Nishmastar V'Esteri Zubasar Meir. While learning as well as a schos for Roshleim of Yudemir Ben Yakir, many of them Fekal Chaim Ramachan Itachayim Ben Sayer Shem Sivim Dezei Dosar Bas Knendel Ita Basim Bas Chayesar Yusachem Sar Esti Yusab Ben Mendel Yezer President Shavlei Shalmit Ben Noami Bashav Fekal Bashir Chana Valdav Itriva Daniel Ben Chana Rezel Besag Shaychali Yisrael. We pick it up on the bottom of Lamid Chav Tesamid Beis. 5 lines on the bottom, the middle of discussing how you make an Eruv. We know that an Eruv Chatzeros, an Eruv Techumim, is something that allows either Eruv Chatzeros, multiple Chatzeros, to carry Midrabanan from one to another. Eruv Techumim extends the Techum, and we've discussed, and this is what we've been discussing the past few days, what qualifies, what food, what level of edibility, which we'll talk about today, is good for the Eruv, and how much food, what quantity of food. And that's where we pick it up today on the bottom of Chav Tesamid Beis. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Kol Shu Lifton, anything which is lifton. Lifton is something that is eaten generally with bread, kedei lachol boy, in order to eat 2 meals of it. Kol she'einoi lifton, that which is not eaten with bread, kedei lachol himanu, that which you eat from it. So what is the difference over here between boy and himanu? So for those who know diktuk, it's pashit. For those who don't, let's swing up over here to the top of Rashi. Rashi, about 10 lines at the bottom, says, K'dei lechel boi, kol shu lifton shi'uroi, k'dei lechel boi, l'lafes boi zapas, Muslim based sudois. Anything that is eaten generally with bread, its shear is the quantity that you would eat with bread. And obviously it's a very vast and tremendous difference. If we're discussing the amount of food that you have to eat, it itself for the entire meal is going to be a much larger quantity than if it's going to be the amount that you eat together with bread. Just as we'll see in the examples of the Gemara, but tuna fish. I don't eat tuna fish, that's why it's a good example. Tuna fish, if you have to eat a full 2 meals of tuna fish, that's a lot of tuna fish. Whereas if you eat the tuna fish with the bread, it's much less. So it says Rashi, one more Rashi, it says Rashi, she calls if it's an item which is not generally eaten with bread, then it is that the entire meal, that is your entire meal, you need the amount that 2 full meals should be with it. So again, menu means that it's the entire meal. So again, one more time, back into the Gemara. Lift on, if it's eaten with bread, the amount that you with bread. Lift on, the amount that you would eat by itself. Now the Gemara gives a bunch of examples. Basar chai, raw meat, menu is the amount that you have to eat it by itself. Again, raw meat is not something that you necessarily eat with bread, apparently, at least in their eating habits. And that is the reason why you do not eat it, you have to eat it by itself. Basar tzli, roasted meat. Rabba amar lechel boy. Rabba says it is the amount that you eat with the bread. Whereas, Rav Yosef Amar K'tilach Leimanu. So if a machlekes Rabban and Rav Yosef, what is the status of this basar tzli, this raw meat? Is this raw meat something that is generally eaten with bread or not? Amar Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef, who taught us K'tilach Leimanu, that it's not eaten with bread and it's an item that you have to eat a full 2 meals from it. So Rav Yosef comes along and says, I'll prove you I'm right. Amar Rav Yosef, Allah, 2 lines at the bottom, Dani Parsai, these Persians, Achli Tabaki, V'loi Nama. Tabaki, you see, Rashi teaches you it's sliced up raw piece of meat, and they eat it, I guess some sort of karpashi or something like that, and they eat it beloy nama, without bread. So says Rav Yosef, since you see that these Persians are eating without bread, must be it's a food that's eaten without bread, and therefore, what are you going to need in order to create it into the Eruv? A full 2 meals of this item without the bread. Abaye responds, and this is a response that we've seen, and we will see many times. Abaye Rube Dama, are the Persians the majority of the world? What are you doing? You found one group of people, that's how they eat it. So what? Are they the majority of the world? But now we learned in our Mishnah. Big day aniyim, big day shirim. It's subjective. It has to be something that you yourself would do. For the aniyim, it's the clothing for them. It's the ashirim, the wealthy, it's the clothing for them. Moving on to Lamed Abed Aleph, today's but the clothing of an ashir, which was for a poor person, doesn't work. So what do we see? We see clearly the fact that we found one group of people that eat something. What does it have to do with me? So why are you, Rav Yosef, teaching me that the Persians eat the sliced meat without bread? Who cares? Maybe you'll tell me maybe you'll tell me that we're just being machmir, we're just being stringent. What do you mean? We're being stringent by saying once we found a group of people that eat without bread, which is obviously a larger quantity of this raw meat, therefore we're just going to be machmir. We learned in a brayso of Shem and Elazar Aimer ma'arvin l'choyle. Let me can hear for a sick person, l'zakin, or an elderly person, the amount of food that he eats, which obviously is not so much if someone is sick, and when someone is elderly, they don't eat so much. So we see it goes subjective. Ula Rav Asan, and someone who's a glutton, someone who eats a ton. So we would expect, if we're just saying l'chumra, that we always have to take the largest amount, the glutton for sure should have to take the large amount. What do we see? We see that's just be the medium meal, that which most people eat. So Rav Yosef, what are you talking about? Again, we had a machlekes Rabban and Rav Yosef whether this basar tzli, not the raw meat, the basar tzli, the sliced meat, this roasted meat, is this something that's eaten with bread or not? Rav Yosef tried to prove for the fact that the Persians eat it together without bread, and then we need a full 2 meals of this item. Says the Gemara, what shaykhs, who cares what the Persians do? We go with the right of the world because you tell me it's the chumrah. It's not true that it's the chumrah, because we see clearly in the Brayso of Shimon Elazar teaches us that we don't just go the chumrah. Says the Gemara, kasha, it is true, it is indeed a question on the opinion of Rav Yosef. Again, it's on the raya of Rav Yosef. Seemingly the machlekes Rabban and Rav Yosef would stand. Rav Yosef tried to bring a raya to his opinion, which the Gemara just refuted. Says the Gemara 6 lines down, Laban Amar Alpha Miyam Rav Shimon Elazar Hachi. Does Rav Shimon Elazar really say this? Again, we're asking that Rav Shimon Elazar just taught us a moment ago that when it comes to Rav Asan, a glutton, the way to determine the Eruv is not going to be the amount of food that he's going to eat, it's going to be the amount of food another Bani is going to eat. So now the Gemara is going to ask from other areas of halacha that seemingly we don't find that it goes with the Raiv of the world, the Adam Bani, rather we find it subjective. So this is an interesting halacha. We find by the halacha when there's a mace in a house, it depends how big the doorways of the house are in order to determine if the doorway is tummy. The house itself is going to be tummy, the mace in the house. The question is, what about the doorways? So it depends how big the doorways are. If all the doorways are more than 4 tfachim, then they're all tummy. You know why? Because the mace might go out any doorway, and therefore all the doorways are tummy. If all of them are smaller than 4 tfachim and one is larger, then that one's going to be tummy. When he says, Rav Shimon Elazar in this brayso, Oig melech habashan, pischai kimalai, his doorway is like his size. His size, meaning he was quite a large person, and therefore it's subjective to him that if there's and look at Rashi is directly across. It saves all the other doorways in the house will not be tamei. Said it's going to be tamei. So what do we see from this price of Shimon Elazar? It's subjective. It seems like we go with the size of Aig. If Aig's a large person, he's a big doorway. So why did you Shimon Elazar just teach us with regard to an Eruv that a glutton does not go with his shear? Says the Gemara, Babayi, Hasam, Heichalavid, Hadumi Nadme Vanafke. What's your choices over there? What, you're going to cut up Ike to get him out of the house? There it is a practical issue. Over there, we have to know which doorway is this dead corpse going to go out of. And therefore, if the dead corpse is a massive corpse, Ike Melech Habashan, it's going to have to need a massive doorway. So it's not something that you could say, oh, look at the world and see what the average person eats. No, this is a practical thing. Which doorway is the mace going to go through? You're not going to cut up the mace as a baye and bring it out the door. And that's the reason, but it's not necessarily a question on the opinion of Shimon Elazar that he says, by Eruv we go by Adam Beni. Ibai Lahu, says the Gemara. Of Shimon Elazar, is this a debatable point? Do the Rabbanan argue about this last case about the mace in the house? Do they argue with Shimon Elazar or not? Says the Gemara, that the doorway by Melech Habashan is with 4 tfachim. Seemingly, it sounds like they do argue, because we see this Bryce that teaches us that once it's 4 tfachim, that door will be tamei. Says Gemara, no, it's not a machlekes. Hasam pesachim kitanim tuba. There's many small doorways. This is what we mentioned before. Vika chadav arba, and there's one doorway which is 4 tfachim. So now, process of elimination. Which doorway are you going to choose? Devadi ki kamarvich va'u kamarvich. Now you have one small doorway, many small doorways. One is slightly small, but a little bit bigger. So now if you're going to widen one of the doorways, what, you're going to take this teeny little doorway and widen it? Of course not. You're going to take the 4 tefach doorway and widen that one. Therefore, we know which way it's going to go. It's not a raya that they argue on. Shimon Elazar. You let him make an Eruv with raw meat. You let him make an Eruv with raw eggs. The Kamam, Yitzchak. Achas, 1 raw egg, Sini Amar Shtayim, 2 raw eggs, and this is obviously something we find raw eggs all over halacha. There's always a debatable point, as we find there's no bishul akum on raw eggs because the eggs are eaten raw. One of the rules of bishul akum is there's no problem a guy cooking your food which is edible raw, because then it's not viewed as the guy did a chashava act for you, because it's saying it's edible raw. So we find that eggs are that way. But obviously all the places we got nowadays, we don't need eggs raw, and therefore, even though maybe a chazan will gargle it or whatnot, But the bottom line is, eggs are not an item that's eaten raw. Therefore, bishlakim, of course, will yes apply to an egg. So over here, the question is going to be, maybe we're going to have the same issue. We see over here in the Gemara that raw eggs were being allowed to use for an Erev, because obviously there was some concept they used to eat them. Whether nowadays that's going to stand the test of time will obviously be totally in a similar machlokes. So back in the Mishnah, we said if someone makes a neder, someone makes a vow, I'm not going to have any food. Mutter b'mayim u'melech, you're allowed to eat water and salt. This was one of the cases. Another one of the cases that water and salt are not considered sustenance, not considered food, and that's the reason why you're allowed to use them. Says the Gemara, what's the obvious implication of the Mishnah? That only water and salt is not food, not sustaining, but everything else is. This refutes the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. They say it's only on the 5 grains and nothing else, and yet we see from our Mishnah that other foods are obviously mazayin. Obviously, it wouldn't make a mazayin on them. So therefore, seemingly not like the opinion of Rav and Shmuel. Obviously, we saw this in Gemara and Brachas. Obviously, we'll just point out parenthetically, we of course paskin that we make mazayin on other items like rice, certain types of rice, orzo, etc. Says the Gemara, did we not ask one time, did we not already shlug up the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel? So what are you asking a question, Rabbi Shmuel? We already asked on them. Says the Gemara, no, what's the problem? This brishta is also a proof not like Rabbi Shmuel. Anything which is zon on me, they don't give sustenance. They give sustenance, meaning we're changing it from the words of mazoin, which are mizoin, types of foods which are, provide sustenance and whatnot. Now we're saying kol hazon olai, anything which is zon, and that's the reason why only water and salt will be excluded. Says the Gemara, we are going to eat these wonderful fruits of ginaiser. This should sound familiar. We had this in Gemara and Brachas when we were 100 people. Everyone would take 10 of these ginaiser fruits, these tremendously sweet and wonderful fruits. Asara, when we were 10 people, everyone would take 100, meaning there was always 1,000 fruits. Whenever you're 100, when I fit into a basket of 3 saw, we eat all of them. We would think we didn't eat anything. They were so sweet and such wonderful fruits, we didn't feel like we ate anything. So what do we see? We see that the word zan obviously doesn't refer to something that gives you sustenance, because they ate tons and tons of fruit. They were certainly sustained, yet they said we don't eat anything. Ema says the Gemara, mizaina. No, it means mizaina is something which is a food sustenance. Amar Ravuna Marav. And now Ravuna Marav, that's the end of that discussion. What the Mishnah means. Now Ravuna Marav comes along and he goes into the different lashonis, different wordages. I'm not sure if that was a word. The different languages. That's probably better English. The different languages of different shvuos that one can make different vows and swears, etc. Amar Ravuna Marav. Shvu shlo yochel kikar zu. Again, when it comes to making a shvuah, every word is very, very precise. Someone makes a shvuah, someone makes a vow. I'm not going to eat kikar zu with this loaf of bread. So you're allowed to use this loaf of bread for an Erev. Says Ravuna Amar Shmuav. Yes, ma'arvin lo yuba. You could use this loaf of bread. What's the obvious reason? Because maybe you can't eat this loaf of bread, but you could get a benefit from this loaf of bread. However, if he said kikar zu alai, if he said this loaf of bread is upon me like a neder, meaning I'm not going to have anything to do with this loaf of bread, in ma'arvin bo, you can't make an erev with it because you're not having anything to do with it. And obviously, it being your erev, it being the item that allows you to work, allows you to walk, allows you to go out of the tchum, etc., would be considered getting anah from it. So if he said I'm not going to have any anah from it, then you're not allowed to make it as an erev. So Meisvei the Gemara is bothered by the statement of Ravuna Marav. Hanoidim in a kikar, ma'arvin loiba. Someone makes a neder from a kikar, you're allowed to use it as an erev. So my love, what's the case? Damar alai. Seemingly we think that the case of this price is, you said a lie, all benefit upon it is forbidden to me. And yet we see you can make an erev, which is seemingly contradictory to the opinion of Ravuna Marav. Says Gemara, loi. Damar zu. You said, zu, this loaf of bread I will not eat, and therefore you could get benefit from it. Says Gemara, you know what? It's logical to learn it that way. Diktani Sefer then says, when is this case? When are you allowed to, yes, use it as an Erev when you said a Shvuah Shalet, and I'm not going to taste it? But if you said I'm not going to have any benefit from him, what will be the din? You will not be able to make an Erev, which fits very well with the opinion of Rav Huna, that if you say a lie upon me, I'm not going to have any benefit. You can use it as an Erev. But if you say I won't taste it, I won't eat it, I won't have any benefit from Achila, from eating it, but you still can use it as an Erev because you get other benefits. Says the Gemara, one second. Very good, it fits with the Seifa, Bihachi, Adadani, from the fact that it says, It says if this loaf of bread is hektish, you can't use it as an erev. Lefi, what's the reason? You can't make an erev out of something which is hektish. We should differentiate. This is obviously a question that we always have whenever we go into the wording of a Mishnah or Brisa. Why did the Brisa Mishnah say if the reason why you cannot use this item because it's hektish? Differentiate with itself. You're only not allowed to use it if what? You said zu, this item I will not eat from. Avol. That's when what? That's when the only reason you can't use it is because of hektish. Meaning, there's two potential reasons you can't use this item as an erev. Either because you made a neder, or because it's part of hektish. For the fact that the Brisa said that you can't use it because it's hektish, let's differentiate. When you said that it's zu, this item, then theoretically you couldn't use it as an erev. You just can't use it because of hektish. Aval Amar a lie, but he said I will not get any benefit from this item. In Marvin Leiba, you can't use it at all, whether it's hektish or not. So why didn't the Brisa differentiate? Ravuna says you're right. Fine, you got me. Seemingly the difference is not between zu and a lie. Says Ravuna Elamai Kol Echad Amar Alai Marvin. What are you going to tell me? What's the other option? I told you the difference between zu, you could yes make an erev, and a lie you cannot. What are you going to tell me? That when he said a lie, I'm not going to have any better from you. You can make an erev? Kasha reisha. Then the reisha is shver. The reisha makes no sense. So the Gemara says, you're right. Let's fix up the reisha. If someone makes a neder from the kikar, you could yes use it as an erev. Even if you said a lie, even when you said Kikar zu a lie, which we would have thought, and that was the Havamina, that it means they won't get any benefit from it. It says, no, it's what it means. It means Shavua Shlei Atimena, a lie. The words mean I will not atimena, I will not taste it. However, you could get other benefits from it. And therefore you can use it as an erev. So the Gemara says, okay, great, you answered up the right. What happened to Ravuna? Ravuna at the end of the day is shver, because Ravuna differentiates between zu and a lie. Says the Gemara, Udamar Rav Eliezer. Ravuna holds like Rav Eliezer, Rav Eliezer Oimer. Rav Eliezer said, if I won't eat from this loaf of bread, you could use it as an erev. Kikar zu a lie, it's upon me, then just like Ravuna said. So Ravuna holds like Rav Eliezer, very good. In the Brisa we answered up. Does Rav Eliezer really say that? This is the rule. A person forbids himself with food. You're allowed to use it as an erev. The food is forbidden upon the person, meaning all benefit. That was the Tanakama of the Brisa. Rav Eliezer, what does Rav Eliezer say? Kikar zu olai marvin ba. You still allowed to use it as an erev. Kikar zu hektish in marvin leiba. Lefishay marvin ba hektishis. So seemingly Rav Eliezer doesn't work. So we just said a second ago. Rav Eliezer says zu. It could yes be an erev. A lie, it's upon me, all benefit. It's no erev, but here in this Brisa, Rav Eliezer doesn't say that. Rav says zu, you can make an erev, but if in the hektish, then you cannot. Says the Gemara, trade tonight, leave it to Rav Eliezer. Okay, this is your tonight, Rav Eliezer, but then the day Rav Huna is going to hold like Rav Eliezer. Continuing on the Gemara, 3 lines on the bottom, Ma'arvin lenazir b'yayin. You're allowed to make an erev for a nazir with wine, even though a nazir can't drink wine. Cause the potential that he could drink it. Says Gemara, Masitzah loy k'beishamai, the Tana beishamai oimrim in Ma'arvin lenazir b'yayin. Beis Shammai says you can't do that. Therefore, the Mishnah is clear out like Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says you can yes make a erev for with wine for Nazir as well. Truma for Yisrael, even though Yisrael cannot eat truma. Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai, do you not admit to me moving like Lamed Beis Shema Arvin like Gadol b'Yom Kippurim that you can make an erev for a Gadol on Yom Kippur? Do not admit to me at that point. Amru lehen Beis Shammai responded, Avol. Now, Avol, let's not get confused. Here, look at Rashi, our best friend Rashi over here. Our best friend over here, as our Turkey used to always call it, just read that beautiful story. Avol means MS. MS, it's true. Don't get confused, or else you'll mess up the whole Gemara. Amru lehen, Beis Shammai responded to Beis Hillel, Avol. Yes, you're right. I do admit to you that on Yom Kippur, you can use food for an erev for a gadol, even though a gadol can't eat the food. So Amru lehen, so Beis Hillel responded, Shem Sharvin legadol b'Yom Kippurim, Kach Marvin lenazir b'yayin liYisrael b'yayin. So too you should be able to make an erev for a nazir with wine, liYisrael b'truma. It's the same thing. It's a potential to eat it, even though you can't really eat it. Beis Shammai, so what does Beis Shammai answer? So the Mishnah is clearly not like Beis Shammai. So what does Beis Shammai answer? Beis Shammai also mikasuda haruuya mibayayim. A very simple differentiation. Over there by Yom Kippur, you could have eaten it during the day before Yom Kippur began, and therefore it's just today I can't eat it. Therefore, Beis Shammai says that's okay. But in the case that on Yom Shabbos you can never eat this item, you're a Nazir, you're a Yisrael, you can never have Truma, then Beis Shammai does not concede, and our Mishnah is like Beis Hillel. Keman. The law, and who does it go with? The like Chananya. This doesn't go with the opinion of Chananya. The Tanya we learned in our Brayis Chananya Oimer. Call Atzman shall be Shammai, the whole opinion of Beishamai, lo yoyimoitim be'iriv. You know how extreme Beishamai was with the Eiriv? Not only did Beishamai just teach us a moment ago that they're going to have an issue with our Mishnah, the potential usage of the food, Beishamai said, you know what they held about the Eiriv? Lo yoyimoitim be'iriv ad, sheyoytei mitazai kol klei tashmish l'sham. You got to bring your bed and all your items there. Again, what are we talking about? We're talking about extending, let's say, Eiriv Techumim. At the end of your 2,000 amos or 12,000 amos, end of the city, you want to extend the area what's called your dwelling, your living place, and therefore you can be able to walk further. So we hold, what do? You take a challah, you take a loaf of bread, you put it there at the beginning of Shabbos, then it's called, that is your house, and then from there you get another 2,000 amos. But Shabbos says, no, I don't agree with all this thing. Not only do not agree, you can't use wine for a Nazir, Truma for Yisrael, but you know what? I hold the way to make an Erev, says Beis Shammai, explained by Chananya. It's only Chanani's opinion, Beis Shammai, that you have to put your bed there, and you got to bring your whole Shabbos there. If you actually move your house to the end of the 2,000 amos, and that is where you're actually going to dwell, then says Beis Shammai, fine, then it extends your Shvisa. But if not, it doesn't work. So that is how Chananya explains Beis Shammai. Says the Gemara, Keman Azla Tanya. Fine, says the opinion of Chananya, explaining what Beis Shammai hold, and the reason we just said it's the loik Chananya, because we just said a moment ago that Beis Shammai holds has to be a sudaruya mivayoyim, has to be just food fit during the day, whereas according to Chananya, not just food fit during the day. The way to make an Erev, you got to put your whole bed, and you got to bring all your clothing there. Says the Gemara, so far we have Beis Shammai, who says, according to the first opinion, he says any food that's potentially fit, like for a Gadol and Yom Kippur, but not yain for a Nazir, etc. We have Beis Hillel that says any potential food is okay, even wine for a Nazir, even Truma for Yisrael, certainly food for a Gadol and Yom Kippur. And then we have this opinion of Chanani that says Beis Shammai holds you have to put your whole house there. Says the Gemara, who does this price going according to? Irim b'shchayrim lo yatzav. If you made an Erev with your black clothing, you can't go out with your white clothing. Come on, this sounds like Chanani. You need to actually put your whole life over there. And therefore, if you put a black shirt, you can't wear a white shirt. But I'll leave it to Beis Shammai. Says Gemara, 1 second, that doesn't work. What are you talking about? According to Chananya, you didn't tell me. You brought a black shirt there. So you just can't go out with your white shirt. What are you talking about? Chananya holds, you got to bring all your clothing there. You got to fully live there. So if you didn't fully live there, if you didn't fully bring all your Shabbos clothing there, it's not going to help to wear anything. You can't go past that line. Hachikamer says the Gemara, Erev bilavanim v'hotzrach l'shchayrim. You made an Erev with the white ones, enough for Shabbos. And now you want to use the black ones. Bilavanim la'yatza. It's not going to work. Keman, who does that go according to? That's Chananya. That even though you made an Erev, and even though you brought your clothing there, and you can't even wear the other clothing. Why? Because it's not in your place of your Erev, because you don't have your full Erev there. You got to move your whole life out to the place of the Erev. That is the opinion of Chananya, explaining Beis Shammai. Says the Gemara about the two dots, smack in the middle of the summit of Lamed Beis. Sumchas Aimer bechulin. Sumchas in the Mishnah argued, and Sumchas said you can't use Truma for Yisrael. You can only use Chulin for Yisrael. Says the Gemara, and I'm sure when anyone who's reading the Mishnah was bothered by this, maybe you peeked at Rashi and you saw that Rashi points out this question. Rilu Nazir liyayin loy polik. Rav Simchas only argues seemingly that Truma you can't use for Yisrael. But he doesn't argue about the wine case by the Nazir. Why not? It's the same potential. My taima, says the Gemara, after the Mishnah use Yurusa. The reason is because by a Nazir you could be shayil, you could undo your Nazirs, you go to a Chacham, and you say, I didn't mean to do this, similar to Tataris Tatarim. And then you could actually drink the wine. And that's the reason why he doesn't argue by the wine for the Nazir. Says the Gemara, Truma also. You could undo the truma. You separated truma to give to a kain. You could undo the truma, and then you'll be allowed to eat it. Says Gemara, 1 second. If you undo the truma, hajalativla. Now it's tevel, and you can't eat tevel. Says Gemara, fine. She'll separate again from another place. No, we don't suspect the chaver, which is a good person, to separate not from the appropriate pile. Says, okay, so you'll take from this item itself and you'll separate part of it as truma, and the other part you'll be able to eat, and then seemingly you'll be able to have it. Says Marz, lastly, sure is not enough. Says Maru, my Pascha, this is crazy. As Rashi says directly across, Bitmir, you're making up this whole convoluted case in Mishnah that the whole area is this teeny little bit, and you could theoretically do it. What are you talking about? Ella Sumchas Savlik Rabbanan, Sumchas also like the Rabbanan, the Amri, called Davar Shumushum Shvas, Kadzula Ben Hashmashais. You know how to do Shvas Ben Hashmashais, which is obviously the way that we pass, barring certain Shvasim, and therefore, since Erev goes by, when the onset of Shabbos is by Ben Hashmashais, once Ben Hashmashais comes, if you didn't separate the Truma, you won't be able to do it anymore. And therefore, that's the reason why, in the case of the Truma, he agrees that it's not going to work, because there's no potential even, because you come on, Azlaha, did not. So the Gemara again tries to figure out who these races going like. Did not. Yesh, I remember Kolfi Masha, who Adam Malay Kamsai, Mincha Malay Chafanav, I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Call the fee Mashu, Adam. Whatever the person, it's all subjective. Malay Kumsai, Mincha, the Karbi Mincha is the Kaimetz. Malay Chavnav is Ketairis, is the handful. Hashaisem, Malay Lugmav Yom Kippurim, the size of Yom Kippur is your cheekful. Umazashay Sudas Erev, and the amount of 2 meals for an Erev. So who is that? Come on, Amar Rav Zir, Sum Chasid Amar, Man the Chazle Binan. We need what you fit for you. And seemingly that's exactly what this price says, that all these measurements are subjective, what you would eat. Says Gemara, Lema Pliga Rav Shimon Elazar. Sounds like he's arguing on Rav Shimon Elazar that we had on top of the Hamid. The Tani we learned to the price Shimon Elazar. I remember having the Chayla Zakin Dem Zainai. The Chayla and the Zakin. I'm sorry about that 1 second. The Chayla and Zakin that goes Dem Zainai. Ul Rav Hasan Besuda Bein Nishal Kol Adam. So it sounds like the fact that the Brisa said that everyone goes by their subjective amount that they eat, so the Galaim should also go. So why do we say Suda Bainness? Says the Gemara, Tirgma Chayla Vizakin. No, it's only referred to Chayla and Zakin. That was the Brisa referring to Avla Ravasa. When it comes to a Galaim, Bala Daita eats Kaladam. A very important rule that we've seen many times, that when it talks about normal, general people, then we say, okay, it's subjective, it goes what you're going to eat. If you are abnormal, you eat a tremendous amount, you don't need 2 slices of pizza, you eat the whole pie, follow daita tzikaladam, so your ear would be what the regular person does. Let's finish up over here. We said on the Mishnah, we said you're allowed to put the ear for the kain, even in the base of pras. Says the Gemara, how do we know that? Meaning, now how do you know that? How could you do that? The kain can't get to his ear. If you can't get to your ear, you can't eat it. So how do you have this called an ear that you're extending your shvisa? No, important rule. I think we saw something about Shabbos in the beginning over there, that you could blow the base of pras. The base of pras is an area that was plowed over, and therefore we suspect maybe there's some fragments of a dead body there. So you do as you walk, you blow away all the dust, all the surface area. Therefore, there'll be no piece of bone over there, no piece of mace, and then therefore you could walk. Similar thing. Once it's fully plowed over, now we don't have to suspect anymore, and therefore it'll be tar. And that's another case that you could use for the kain to put in the Erev in such an area. Rav Yehuda basic virus. Rav Yehuda said even a bigger chiddush. You allowed to put the Erev for a kain. A kain obviously can't become tamei, but you can put it inside the cemetery. How's that possible? You can't get there. Tana we learned in the myth, and you know what he could do? Put himself in a box, and he could fly there. And if he flies there, then there is no Tama, he won't become Tama, and that's how he'll get to his Erev. We'll just start this. This is really going to go into tomorrow's daf. Says the Gemara, Kasavar oil Zarik Shmei oil. So seemingly, what do we see over here? That he holds an oil Zarik, a thrown oil, an oil that's traveling in flight. Shmei oil is called an oil, and therefore he won't become Tama. Ubeluk to Dani Tanayim. It's Machlekes with the following Tanayim. That what? Actually, let's just, you know what? We're not going to get involved in this, because this really goes all the way on Talmud Aleph. Let's just see one Rashi before we call it a day. Says Rashi, oil zarik, oil metaltel. It's called a moving oil. Again, taking this kind of putting him in a box, so we're transferring him into the basic virus. Shemei oil, v'choyitzit bin elbein atoma. That's important Rashi. And it's choyitzit, it makes you that you won't become tamei. So if this kain puts himself in a box and somehow he gets thrown into the cemetery, he'll potentially get there next to his Erev and he won't become tamei. If anyone was wondering, very good, he's there, but he's inside the box. How is he going to eat the food? That will be tomorrow's daf. I'll pick it up there tomorrow.